Adult humor has always been a part that has been explored in animation. From The Simpsons, remembering that for many its own copy or plagiarism, Family Guy, a series with simple animation like South Park, and even a super offensive series that if made today would make many people cry, like Drawn Together.
In each of them, we have seen how they have tried to break the limits of political correctness and dedicated to dark humor or even reaching the absurd.
But these types of series would have to evolve, and it caught my attention that series like Hazbin Hotel and Hey Yo, the Boss became quite famous but also quite controversial. Even Japan wanted to enter this type of humor by releasing an anime with a cartoon style but also handling that same humor. Panty and Stocking with Garter Belt. Both series are quite similar, touching on themes of hell, the supernatural, featuring characters like sinners, so to speak, having angels, demons, using super vulgar language, sexual humor, and super exaggerated violence. But why is one loved while the other two are super hated? But before starting, I have been asked for many ideas for which I am very grateful. Just give me time to make the videos and I will gladly do so. Just be patient with me, please. Hazbin Hotel is an animated series for adults created by Vivian Medrano, Vivsipop, which presents us with a version of hell at the dawn where sinners arrive after their death and where violence and chaos are the daily bread. The story revolves around Charlie, the princess of the underworld, who believes that demons can be redeemed. Her goal is to establish a hotel where sinners have a second chance and can improve instead of being annihilated in the world, which maintains the demographic balance in hell itself. The series mixes musicals, although I don't really like comedy, action, and drama in a world full of demons, each with their own dark story. Despite the creative premise, it has generated some passion as well as rejection, especially due to its style of humor and possibly certain characters. One of the most common criticisms of this series has to do with its style of humor, which many consider forced, etchy, and very superficial because it relies on fast-paced dialogues, risque jokes, very sensual references, and dark humor. But for many, these elements feel inorganic, more like a way to show that the content is for adults rather than a real tool for the story or being interesting. This has led several users to see this humor as immature or very repetitive, especially when compared to other adult series like Botchat or Serman, where the humor, although also dark or uncomfortable, is more specialized in social criticism or emotional depth. Many jokes seem to seek impact without content, which can generate some rejection for those who perhaps expected a bit of balanced humor. Although, let's see, they have also touched on interesting topics like our protagonist, because unfortunately from my point of view, there is a great unjustified hatred towards the main character, despite the fact that her proposal is quite interesting, I mean a hopeful one in a very doomed world. Part of the fandom and other people have labeled this character as something boring, little useful, or even hypocritical. However, many of these criticisms cannot delve into the context as Charlie represents something countercultural within this ill, as it is the desire for change and empathy in a setting without redemption. The fact that she is not violent, loud, or sexualized like other female figures makes some consider her less interesting when in reality her role challenges cynicism and poses a conflict of ideals with the other characters. The problem here is not the character, but perhaps the expectation of certain sectors about how this type of protagonist should act in an adult series. Alastor, also known as the Radio Demon, is one of the most popular characters here as his design, voice, and presentation are interesting, but when we analyze his role within the story, it is evident that he is a charlatan as he joins Charlie's project not because he believes in her cause, but because it entertains him, or I dare say he is manipulating her. Even so, being a charlatan character because he didn't last at all against Dan, I dare say that doesn't make him a bad character. It is a contrast between, I could say, the help and his intention. It gives him a certain depth and makes him perhaps an unpredictable character, which many expect to be interesting, as his permanent smile, his style as a showman makes him very charismatic, but at the same time unsettling. He is one of of those characters you can love and whose presence is imposing even without the need for physical violence. But we cannot deny that the problem with this character who fits well within his universe was with the fandom, who started comparing him to characters like Bill and the one from Villainous Ase. But this controversy cannot be discussed without mentioning this fandom, which has been pointed out on numerous occasions as very toxic, aggressive, and conflictive, because if we can see from the first shorts on YouTube, the project gained a very large community but also a very toxic one, as many have been accused of harshly attacking anyone who criticizes this series, including other content creators or certain fans with a different opinion, as this has generated a somewhat negative image of the fandom. And maybe for exaggerating the power level of the characters, although there is one that I admit handles it with good humor. Their characters have been misunderstood. But let's see, there is only one first season. Let's wait to see how it evolves. And we couldn't talk about the spin-off, as it is set in the same universe as Hazbin Hotel, but this series focuses on a different story.
It follows the adventures of a company called Immediate Mother Professionals, a group, a type of demons that travel to the human world to assassinate people under a certain contract. Although they share visual style and tone with a human series, here it has taken a very different direction that can be categorized as another series, which has been both its greatest strength and unfortunately also its main weakness.
The humor is without a doubt one of the most controversial elements. On one hand, there are those who find it funny, and I include myself among them, and others find it irreverent and suitable for an animated series for adults. But on the other hand, many critics point out that there is an overuse of sexual jokes or vulgarity, or even that it is repetitive. Jokes are present in almost every episode and are often the center of the comedy. This has led some to feel that the script relies too much on this type of humor instead of developing certain ideas more varied or clever. What some may find funny, others find cringeworthy, and yet the formula repeats again in each episode. Also, I don't know if you remember the Luna short where she seemed to have empathy with a certain human. That short was somewhat controversial with quite interesting humor, although for some it was poorly received. Seriously, that's how Luna looks. How scary, man. The characters are mostly morally gray or outright immoral. Rizzo, the protagonist, is a chaotic and very selfish boss with a personality interesting, explosive, mixing traumas, obsessions, and inappropriate humor. Luna, Moti, Millie, and Stolas also represent deep emotional conflicts, but they rarely face real consequences for their actions, although Millie's storyline is interesting. Let's see how to handle the baby. For some, this morality is part of the show's charm. They are demons in hell, they are not expected to be good for anything, but for others, perhaps there is a lack of character development or maybe real interesting consequences. It makes the characters perhaps feel empty or unpleasant at certain moments. Prioritizing toxic attitudes or harmful relationships without making an interesting critique is as I said, peg another point that is the story structure. Sequence synergy is at the beginning the series seemed to focus on comedy and the team's missions, but over time it shifted towards more personal subplots, especially centered on the relationship between Blitzo and Stolas. Although this twist might have seemed interesting, unfortunately for many, it turned out to be confusing and poorly planned. The episodes sometimes seem disconnected from each other, the subplots are not always resolved, and there are continuity issues that affect the coherence of the universe itself. Additionally, some script decisions give the impression of improvisation, as if the story were being written episode by episode without a clear direction. One aspect that cannot be ignored main Katanaras when talking about this is its fandom, both the positive and the negative. While it has created a very interesting and creative community, it has also led to behaviors that many consider toxic and uncomfortable. Seriously, inanasate the hypersexualization of Luna herself, but it's understandable. She's a mananura, she's a goth but furry who is a demon with a wolf form. Many conceive her in a sexualized way, which has led to the character being exploited in memes and fan arts and very explicit content. Of course, this has reinforced the image that the fandom is heavily dominated by the furry sector and has caused some discomfort among viewers who just want to enjoy the series without that focus. I include myself in that. I don't care what you are, man. As long as it doesn't get to child pornography, it's all good, man. It's also an imperfect product with some problems in its story, excessive reliance on sexual humor, although I clarify it doesn't bother me, and a fan community that doesn't always allow constructive criticism. A great impact on independent adult animation, and now that it will arrive on Prime Video, let's hope it becomes more recognized and explores more subplots. Now, it is an anime produced by Gainax, which surprised the world by breaking almost all the conventions of traditional anime. The series follows two angel sisters, Panty and Stocking, who must hunt ghosts to redeem themselves and return to heaven, but their behavior is far from the celestial ideal. Panty is a nymphomaniac, shameless, and Stocking a goth obsessed with sweets and existentialism. Unlike other series that use sexual humor repetitively or vulgarly without context, here it embraces the absurd as an art. The humor is mainly present in Panty, but it is not used just for show. Rather, it serves as a tool to mock certain stereotypes and structures in the story. For her part, Stocking adds another layer of darker, gothic, and ecchi humor, perfectly balancing her sister's counterpart. Moreover, the series is not limited to the sexual. It has absurd comedy that borders on the surreal, where anything can happen and nothing is taken seriously. From certain parodies of famous movies to entire episodes that pay homage and mock other animes. This plays with the viewer's expectations at every moment. Something I dare say sustains the series' success is the chemistry between the sestos. Patty represents the excess of boldness and unfiltered sexual freedom, while in Stocking's case, she is introspective, with a more subtle but no less sharp humor. This duo creates a perfect dynamic that keeps the viewer entertained. It's not just about them being opposites, but how they confront their differences entirely within the story. When both work together or fight each other, the result is interesting and very fun. This constant and interesting interaction makes it one of the reasons why they are very memorable, very memorable. One of the most distinctive elements is the visual style, which breaks the mold of traditional anime. Inspired by Western cartoons like those from Cartoon Network in the 2000s, the character design, colors, and exaggerated expressions are reminiscent of many classic series, but with an adult and Japanese twist. This mix is not only visually quite interesting, but it allows the series to break certain anime rules without fear of becoming grotesque or adorable, or even violent or sexual from one scene to another, from one moment to the next. The animation moments are indeed very fluid in the fights, and the transformations demonstrate the technical quality of the Gainax studio. The story does not try to be complex. It focuses on the sisters hunting ghosts to obtain heavenly coins and redeem themselves. But what makes this premise special is how it unfolds. Each episode is an opportunity to experiment with different styles, references, and themes. The series can jump from being a critique of empty fame to a zombie story, then to a Transformers parody, and then to a stop-motion style episode without losing internal coherence. This creative freedom keeps the viewer always on edge and turns each episode into a certain surprise. Despite being a relatively short anime, it has left a very deep mark on the fandom. References to the series appear in memes, cosplays, animations, and even in other animes. It is a work that challenged the rules of the medium and is still fondly remembered more than a decade later, even now, thanks to its return in the form of a sequel. Now, under the Trigger Studio, it only confirms how beloved the franchise is and the potential it still has to explore. No, pues sola. It really is not an anime for everyone, but precisely because of that, it is so special. It is a series that dares to be irrelevant, rude, creative, and visually bold, unafraid to break away from traditional anime standards. Its humor works because it doesn't stay in one place but takes it to the extreme of absurdity, all wrapped in a unique aesthetic with very charismatic characters, intelligent comedy, and a very free story. It has become a cult work that many still celebrate and hope to see grow. But lately, I've also seen that it has become hated on X. Although, well, on X, everything that becomes popular becomes hated. But you can share your point of view on these series. Tell me, comment on what you think.
I invite you to watch more of my videos. Come on, I know you'll love them. What are you waiting for?